Announcements none. Papers have been laid. Motion.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that all the business on today's order paper be exempted from the provisions of paragraph 2 of Standing Order 10.
Seconded. The question is that the business on today's order paper be exempted from the provisions of paragraph 2 of Standing Order 10. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. The ayes have it.
Statements by ministers none. Public bill, second reading.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the Supplementary Appropriation 2020-2021 number 3 bill number 7 of 2022 be read a second time. The object of the bill is to provide for supplementary appropriation in respect of services of government for financial year 2020-2021 for a total amount of 1,180,474,000 rupees under 5 votes of expenditure. Mr. Speaker, sir, the House will recall that the total voted provisions for financial year 2020-2021 was of 184,900,000,000 rupees. After the closure of accounts, the total amount actually spent in that financial year amounted to 176.6 billion rupees, that is 8.3 billion rupees below the total sum appropriated. However, actual expenditure under 5 votes of expenditure exceeded the appropriations by a total amount of 1.18 billion rupees. This excess amount was essentially met through reallocation of funds from vote contingencies and reserves and other votes that had unspent balances. Section 105(3) of the Constitution stipulates that where any head of expenditure, also known as vote of expenditure, requires funds in addition to what has already been appropriated, such additional funds shall require further appropriation by the National Assembly through a supplementary appropriation bill. Thus, although total actual spending in financial year 2020-2021 was below the total appropriated amount, a supplementary appropriation bill is required in accordance with Section 105(3) of the Constitution in respect of the 5 votes that have exceeded their voted provisions. These 5 votes are listed in the schedule to the bill together with the respective sums. The concerned items of expenditure as well as explanatory notes thereon are set out in the estimates of supplementary expenditure that has already been tabled in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to inform the House that the supplementary appropriation is required as follows. First, a net amount of 7.1 million rupees under vote 5 for Mauritius meteorological services, mainly for payment of fees to consultants in connection with enhancing the meteorological observation, weather forecasting, and warning capabilities. Second, a net amount of 10.3 million rupees under vote 7.5 Corporate and Business Registration Department, mainly to cater for expenses incurred by the department in connection with AML-CFT and the new attribution to collect trade fees on behalf of local authorities with effect from January 2020. Third, 7.8 million rupees under vote 8.1, Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, that was required essentially for payment of contributions to the African Peer Review Mechanism. Fourth, 72.2 million rupees under vote 14.1, Ministry of Tourism, for provision of additional grant to the Mauritius Tourism Promotion Authority for effective payment to hotels used as quarantine centers for COVID-19 cases. And finally, 1.08 billion rupees under vote 21.1, Ministry of Health and Wellness, essentially for meeting expenses incurred in connection with COVID-19 pandemic. I wish to inform the House that in view of the exceptional expenditure that were required in financial year 2020-2021, the actual budget deficit for financial year 2020-2021 was 7% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, sir, I now commend the bill to the House.
Seconded. Honourable members, I wish to remind the House that debate on an estimate of supplementary expenditure is restricted to the reasons as to why the extra money is being sought. So I will call the next orator.
Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the third time we are called upon to approve additional expenditure, which was not provided for in the budget of 2021, which was voted back in June 2020. So we have to ask ourselves, why were these expenditures not included in the two other supplementary appropriation bill for that financial year, which we have already voted? The second supplementary appropriation bill was circulated in June of last year. Surely by that time, each ministry ought to have known what additional expenditure they had incurred, as revised estimates of these expenditures had been included in the following budget. But this just goes to show, Mr. Speaker, sir, how amateurish budgeting is handled by the government, a total lack of respect for honourable members of the House who spend time participating in budgetary debates and committee stage. It also goes to show how little thought process and planning goes into preparation of budget by this government. Because they have a majority, they can approve any expenditure outside the budget, so why bother plan? Turning to the expenditures that we are called upon to approve, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are asked to approve additional fees to consultants for enhancing the meteorological observation weather forecasting and warning capabilities. Why has the budgeted amount simply been doubled? We budgeted 14 million, we end up paying up twice that amount. Who are the consultants? How were they selected? Have they already completed their work? Have they submitted their report? And will it make any difference to weather forecasting? We are very interested to know, because everyone agrees that our meteorological service is particularly unreliable when it comes to forecasting the weather. Even after the Doppler radar at Suivez has become operational. And we have seen it again earlier this year when they failed to warn us about the heavy rainfall which caused flooding in many areas. In fact, the weather forecast by Mr. Goudard, an amateur on the Facebook, is much more reliable. Next item, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We are asked to approve some additional 60 million rupees to be paid to our ambassadors and other staff serving in our diplomatic missions. So the question we have to ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, sir, is how many of our ambassadors today are career diplomats? How many are political nominees, copains, copines, rewarded for their services to the party in power, but handsomely paid by Le PIP? What is the value added by these political nominees? Yes, Mr. Speaker, yes, Mr. Prime Minister, political appointees has been there, they has been appointed. but never before. We have 18, listen that correctly, we have 18 foreign missions. Out of these 18 foreign missions, how many career diplomats do we have today? 0. We have only one career diplomat, he's sitting in the ministry. Zero moment. And you know why he says zero moment? Because under the Constitution, Section 87 of the Constitution, the President appoints our ambassador. How? Acting on the advice of the Prime Minister, who only has a duty to consult the PSC. So today, if we have copy, and we do have copy, we also have, let me finish, we also have member of family. We have cousin, cousine, not just copain, copine. We have cousin, cousine. 18 missions, 18 foreign missions, and the Prime Minister have appointed 18 political appointees. This is the reality, and he's not paying for it. It's not the Prime Minister who's paying for it. It's us, les PEP, who is paying for it. And that is why we have the reason, we have the duty, he has a duty to explain why is it that career diplomats has not been appointed anymore. We have retired diplomats. We have 3. Mr.
Honorable Utim, allow me to stop you there. Your debate should be restricted to the reasons why the money is needed, whether they are career or whether they are politically appointed or whatever is immaterial. It's the money that matters.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I bow to your judgment. I can understand the embarrassment that this is causing to the Prime Minister, who is personally responsible for these appointments. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are asked to vote several million rupees to compensate for the depreciation, the fluctuation in exchange rate. So the depreciation in the rupee of Mauritius is not only affecting inflation in Mauritius, but also the amount of money that we are having to fork for our foreign missions. We are asked to approve the rental of Chancery in Riyadh, 8 million rupees. So I can ask a question. Our ambassador, is he based in Riyadh or is he based in Dubai? Does he have a residence in Riyadh or does he have a residence in both Riyadh and Dubai? And do we, is that normal? Do we have to pay for 2 residences? And what about Jeddah? Do we still have an office in Jeddah? Turning to Dubai, we're asked to pay for the representational vehicle for Dubai consulate. The Director of Audit has been particularly critical. In 2020, government had approved, the ministry had approved, the purchase of 1 representational vehicle. But instead of 1 representational vehicle, the consulate bought 1 representational vehicle and 1 service vehicle, without any tender process, without getting the consent approval of the parent ministry. So I know that Honorable Ganu is speaking just after me. I want him to tell us, what has he done, what has the ministry done after knowing that the consulate has acquired vehicle using Mauritian public funds while flouting procurement procedure? What happened to that car? Who is driving this car? Has this car been sold? We have to know, because this is an example of deliberate flouting of public funds, and I hope that there will not be any cover-up in this matter. Next, Ministry of Tourism. The Director of Audit made 4 criticisms, and I'm glad that the Deputy Prime Minister is intervening on this bill, because he will have to answer the 4 criticisms of the Director of Audit, because we are asked to approve 123 million additional funds. First, there is a travel agency who repatriated cruise workers. He owes us 10.6 million rupees. So we need to know who is this travel agent and what action has been taken against him. Second, there is an hotelier who owes 5.2 million rupees for PCR tests carried out on tourists. Again, we have to know who are these hoteliers and what action has been initiated to recover those 5 million rupees. There is also port agent for Wakasio, who owes 655,000 rupees, and certain irrecoverable guaranteed expenses from Mauritian and foreigners. So I hope the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister answered. The first one is irrecoverable. These are people who just came in and they didn't pay for it, and they are untraceable. We can't recover it. So this, I think, it's okay. Which takes us to the final item of expenditure. Our champion of overspending and wastage of public funds, our own HC, the one and only Ministry of Health and Wellness, the case study for wastage and flouting of public funds, the bestseller of how to waste public funds and get away with it.
Honourable Tim, I think you're getting more and more involved in a debate. It's political debate. This question is a question about the figures. You're a seasoned politician and you should know better than me that you're trespassing your rights. Please continue.
Sorry, I get emotional when people waste public funds, because here we're talking about 1 billion rupees. We are talking about 1 billion rupees, Mr. Speaker, sir. We are talking about voting hundreds of millions of rupees in allowance and overtime. And we can't criticize. We can't criticize. We're asked to vote hundreds of million rupees of overtime and allowances. We can't criticize. Who are we to criticize? They were saving lives. We have to approve 255 million rupees of additional money for medical supplies. We had already voted 1 billion rupees, not enough. The ministry overspent by 23%, but they are saving lives. Okay, the director of audit criticized them, but director of audit is paid to criticize. Okay, PAC criticized them, but we are paid to criticize them because they are saving lives. Okay, we are paying for medicines, which we end up not using. Medicines that had expired. I can tell that because this is the public funds used to buy medicines through lack of proper planning. Mais, Monsieur le Speaker, sir, bizarre faire la cuisine roulée, vous autres.
Your time
Nous
is
avons
over.
Covid. Il faut
Please
profiter.
cooperate. Your time is over. The next orator, Honourable Ganu.
Mr. Speaker, sir, just to answer the first point that was made by the honourable member on the issue of the career diplomats, copain-copine. Mr. Speaker, sir, we all know that all governments who have come in power since the beginning of independence have always chosen ambassadors not only from the core of career diplomats. All governments, Mr. Speaker, sir. What is happening today is not new. We all know when the MSM was in power from 2000 to 2005, how many ambassadors were chosen and suggested by the leader of the MMM at that time. I don't want to give names to name those former diplomats, Mr. Speaker, sir. And even when the Labour Party and the PMSD were in power, we all know how many diplomats, ambassadors, high commissioners were chosen as a result of their proximity with the leader of the Labour or the PMSD in those days. So I think it's unfair on the part of the honourable member to come today when we are discussing supplementary appropriation, which, as you rightly pointed out, is the occasion for the opposition to come and query about the righteousness, the justification of the expenses, and not to come and discuss about policy. We all know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that ambassadors, the nomination of ambassadors is governed by constitutional provision, and we know how it is done. But to come and to say that today the Prime Minister is the first Prime Minister who has been appointing people of his choice to join the different missions that we have is unfair, because, as I said, all governments in the past have been doing, have been adopting the similar practice of knowing people in whom they have confidence, in whom they have faith, to act as high commissioners or ambassadors. Now,
Order, 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 order. You continue, Honorable.
Now, to come to the other to the other items, Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to remind the House with regard to item 10.44, Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the renovation work and purchase of assets. I will. This is item 31112, non-residential building, upgrading of office building, additional provisions required for partitioning works at Newton Tower Office. This supplementary appropriation is in fact due to renovation works after elections of 2019, where a request for renovation of an office, including the lounges, reception area, secretariat office, kitchen and others located at the 11th floor of Newton Tower was received in November 2019, Mr. Speaker, sir, and it was therefore at the request of the previous minister to renovate the office and also the office of his advisor and the setting up of a kitchen and other premises, and this is why these expenses were made. Now, with regard to Dubai, Mr. Speaker, sir, the additional provision is required for the purchase of furniture. I'm referring to item 22040, additional provision required for the purchase of furniture for the newly posted ambassador in Dubai and the purchase of a PABX system for our mission in New Delhi, and finally to answer the honourable member with regard to our ambassador. Our ambassador is based in Riyadh, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the state, the ministry, is making no expenses with regard to any rent or to any property in Dubai. So it's not true to say that the ministry is funding two premises, one in Riyadh and one in Dubai. I repeat it, nothing is being spent with regards to any property in Dubai for the convenience of our ambassador in Riyadh. The other items, Mr. Speaker, sir, relate to compensation of employees, to utilities, fuel and oil, office equipment, as I said, cleaning services, publication of stationery, overseas travel, and then there is also many expenses which we are asking the House to approve with regard to grants. For example, donation to Madagascar. That provision was required in a spirit of solidarity with the people of Le Grand Sud, which was affected by severe drought. And then we have also contribution to international organizations. I'm referring to item 26212, United Nations Organization, African, Caribbean and Pacific States, Commonwealth Foundation, Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, Commonwealth Secretariat, International Seabed Authority, group of G77 ECDC, IOC Secretariat, International Exhibition Bureau, African Commission on Nuclear Energy, African Peer Review Mechanism, which was mentioned by the Honourable Minister of Finance. Other expenses referred were related to acquisition of non-financial assets, acquisitions of vehicles, personal emoluments, staff costs, goods and services, additional provision required for maintenance of the Mauritius Trade Portal, and the contribution to other international organizations like the World Trade Organization and the World Intellectual Property Organization, Mr. Speaker, sir. I have done.
Next orator.
Mr. Speaker, sir, just to answer the previous member of the opposition that was speak earlier, I'm surprised the way he speaks, but anyway, it has to be, nowadays you have to get used to this kind of virulence, I suppose. Now we are told that the meteorological services was particularly unreliable. I would like to inform that member, number one, there is no meteorological service in the world that is 100% reliable. There is no, it may be just for him. And secondly, they failed to give proper warning. And I've explained what happened in March this year. I came, there was a PQ, and explained that twice in this house. But maybe he wasn't here, maybe he didn't understand what I was explaining. But I explained that with the climate change now, the risk of adverse weather condition is increasing. You are going to get severe hurricane, severe flash flood. And we have to live with it. And because of this change in weather, now the equipment that we have now, sometimes we can't afford to give the exact forecast if the change is coming too quickly. What I mean is that if you're going to get a change in the weather in about 15 minutes or 30 minutes, it's difficult to get a weather forecast at such a short notice. We don't have that equipment. That's why we are spending money. We're trying to improve the system. But to expect that we can do everything all the time, well, I'll leave it to him. Mr. Speaker, sir, the meteorological services, being an essential service provider, has a mandate to provide timely weather and climate services, as well as warning for hydrometeorological hazards for enhanced socio-economic development of the Republic of Mauritius. In line with its strategic goal, the MMS is continuing to improve its observation. Yes, continue to improve its observation network. Regular data from automatic weather station, automatic rain gauge station, and lightning detectors are contributing toward better analysis in the provision of services to stakeholders. The MMS is further modernizing, is continue to modernize its service to the benefit of the citizens of the Republic of Mauritius. In line with the World Meteorological Organization strategy 2020 and 2023, the MMS aims to provide science-based climate information for decision-making in key sectors, notably water, agriculture, energy, health, and disaster risk reduction. The focus is to enhance the science for service value chain to ensure that scientific and technological advance improve the predictive, and I said, underline the word, to improve the predictive capabilities of the MMS. We have Mr. Speaker, sir, I've mentioned it, we can't give weather which is 100% accurate. It does not exist anywhere in the world nowadays, so far. Mr. Speaker, sir, with respect to the supplementary fund being required by the MMS, they are meant for the following item. And item 21110.004 allowance, an additional provision of 783,000 is required for the payment of allowance, equivalent to 3 increments to the meteorological telecommunication technician posted at Troserve Doppler weather radar station, and also for refund and public holidays and night allowance. 10 officers working on shift at Troserve were paid allowance for the period January 2020 to May 2021. Under item 21111.001 overtime, an additional provision of 478,000 rupees is required for the payment of overtime to officers of the Meteorological Telecommunication Technician, cadre, who have been called upon to work on weekends and public holidays due to shortage of staff. 7 officers were paid overtime for period of March 2020 to January 2021. Under the item 22010, cost of utilities, an additional provision of 113,000 rupees is required for settlement of claim, firstly, as a result of increase in the consumption of electricity, following acquisition of 2 new air conditioners at the MMS headquarters in Vakwa, and for telephone charges for period February to March 2020, that is in the financial year 2019 to 2020, were received in April 2021. That is in the financial year 2020-2021 due to COVID-19 lockdown in the year 2021. Under the item 22020, fuel and oil, an additional provision of 241,000 rupees is required to meet increase in the consumption of fuel and oil used for day-to-day running of vehicle of the MMS. and generators at Agalega and Samondo Island, as well as through Surf Doppler radar. During the COVID-19 lockdown period from March to May 2020 and from February to March 2021, the use of fuel for the MMS vehicle had almost tripled due to the transportation of staff from and to their places of residence. Under item 22120, fees and additional provision of 14,207,000 is required for the payment of fees to consultant in respect to project on enhancing meteorological observation, weather forecasting, and warning capabilities. A grant of 260 million Japanese yen, amounting to 81 million Russian rupees, was obtained from the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, for the previously mentioned project for the period of 2019 to 2020, 2019-2020 to 21-22. Due to travel restriction associated with COVID-19 pandemic, JICA had conveyed the training online in order to continue with the implementation of the project. During the financial year 2021, a book adjustment of 26,944,000 was made. Under the item 26210.23, contribution to World Meteorological Organization, an additional provision of 59,000 rupees is required due to fluctuation in exchange rates. Under the item 26210.025, contribution to World Meteorological Organization Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, an additional provision of 7,000 rupees is required due to fluctuation in exchange rates. Under item 26210.026, contribution to African Center of Meteorological Application for Development, an additional provision of 15,000 rupees is required due to the fluctuation in exchange rates. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the previous speaker earlier said that it's better to listen to the amateur Mr. Goodell for his weather output. I think he's welcome to it. He can keep on listening to him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
MP Foukyun.
Monsieur le Président, je parlerai essentiellement sur les estimations des dépenses supplémentaires 2020-2021 du ministère de la Santé. On nous demande de voter une somme additionnelle totale d'1,18 milliard de roupies et la somme demandée par le ministère de la Santé est d'1,08 milliard de roupies qui représente presque la globalité de ces dépenses supplémentaires. J'aimerais donc souligner qu'on nous demande de voter une somme additionnelle énorme des fonds publics, surtout quand tous les indicateurs économiques du pays se trouvent déjà dans le rouge et la dette publique est plus de 100% du PIB, un seuil jamais atteint auparavant. Ce qui représente une dette bien lourde sur la tête de nos enfants. La dotation au ministère de la Santé pour le budget 2020-2021 était de 11 890 millions de roupies et le montant additionnel représente presque 10% de ce budget. Au moment où le peuple s'étouffe avec une inflation à 2 chiffres et voit son pouvoir d'achat grandement amoindri, je souhaite que tout n'est pas mis sur le compte du Covid-19 et l'argent des contribuables est judicieusement dépensé, particulièrement en se rappelant des antécédents de ce ministère de la Santé. Dois-je rappeler les scandales dont ce ministère serait impliqué depuis 2019 ? Une somme vertigineuse d'1,7 milliard de roupies décaissées sous les Emergency Procurement Procedures durant le premier confinement. La pandémie du Covid-19 a été l'occasion pour certains de faire de bonnes affaires. Des proches du pouvoir se sont enrichis sur le dos des malades, de ceux qui ont perdu leur travail.
Now you're going into politics. You are a new MP. Listen to my advice. You are a new MP. Maybe you don't know it, but this debate is restricted to the figures as to why this amount is being needed. Please continue.
C'est pour cela que j'explique pourquoi il faut être vigilant avant de voter plus d'1 milliard de roupies
No, you may
parce
ask
que-
question. You may ask question.
Parce
honorable
que ce
member.
ministère a des antécédents. Je continue. Je vais... vous avez interrompu mon collègue l'honorable Reza Outim. Vous le faites pareil avec moi. Mais je vais quand même continuer. Je vais omettre...
No. You are passing comments on the chair. You don't have the right to do that. It is out of order. You don't have the right to do that. You have to respect the chair.
Puis-je
Please
continuer?
continue.
Je ne vais pas rappeler donc tous les scandales qu'il y a eu. Je pense que la population connaît déjà. Donc, j'aimerais juste, permettez-moi, de dire que, en tant qu'opposition responsable, on reconnaît que la crise du Covid-19 a été d'un défi d'une ampleur inédite. Et il ne s'agit pas de blâmer le ministère de la Santé sur le Covid lui-même. Non, non. Au contraire, j'aimerais applaudir les efforts et les sacrifices du personnel hospitalier, des infirmiers, des médecins.
But again, Honorable Utim said that honorable members are taking the time of the House to ask them to vote whatever, and you're taking the time of the House to say whatever. Please come back to the logic of the budget.
Exactly. OK, laissez-moi venir aux dépenses supplémentaires alors.
Thank you very much.
Des dépenses que je vous rappelle qui ont déjà été décaissées. On nous demande d'approuver un montant additionnel totalisant 322 millions de roupies pour le paiement des hôtels qui ont été utilisés comme des centres de quarantaine. 322 millions de roupies. Mais connaissons-nous les critères qui ont été mis en place par rapport au choix de ces hôtels? Le rapport de l'audit 2019-2020 mentionne qu'il n'y avait aucun élément de preuve disponible dans les procédures d'appel d'offres, que les procédures d'appel d'offres ont été respectées dans la sélection des hôtels utilisés comme centres de quarantaine. Et pire encore, le rapport de l'audit 2020-2021 nous informe que les procédures pour l'attribution des centres de quarantaine ont été effectuées au téléphone. Monsieur le Président, une liste de critiques ont été formulées par le directeur de l'audit pour son rapport 2020-2021 concernant le suivi et contrôle inadéquat de ces centres de quarantaine. Que des centaines de millions de roupies ont été payées à ces hôtels avant même qu'il y ait eu vérification.
Again, you're going into politics. The figures are there. You may ask questions as to how this money will be spent or has been spent. Please, be helpful to the House.
C'est le directeur de l'audit qui a formulé toutes ces critiques. Il a dit qu'il y a eu empressement. Alors puis-je demander pourquoi il y a eu empressement pour le paiement à ces hôtels avant même la signature des contrats? Ben voilà, c'est une question. J'aimerais bien que l'honorable ministre vienne éclairer tout cela après. Et parce que, une fois de plus, le directeur de l'audit pointe du doigt le non-respect du Public Procurement Act, cette fois-ci par rapport au choix des traiteurs.
No, again, once more, the director of audit has got all his rights. Parliament has got all its rights and standing orders. Please, talk about the figures.
The figures say that this pandemic, cette pandémie a été l'occasion pour certains de faire fi des lois de bonne gouvernance.
Again, it looks like you have no speech. You have 4 minutes left. See how to round up.
Mais c'est ce que j'ai à dire parce que c'est vrai.
No, you're trespassing standing orders, Madame Foukyun. You're trespassing standing orders.
This is
standing orders.
This is what I have to say.
No, it's not what you want to say.
It is about the figures and why we should be cautious.
I will listen to you. You have 3 minutes left.
Ben, je vais donc continuer par rapport aux critiques qui a été faite.
Again, the criticism will be about policies.
OK, Monsieur le Président.
This is Parliament. Parliament is not trespassing on the rights of the Director of Audit, but you cannot trespass the standing orders. Madame Foukyun.
Je termine. Outre la dotation budgétaire pour les heures supplémentaires,
and I need your guidance, can a person on this side of the House ask a question as to what procurement method has been used when we're going to pay, when we're called upon to pay for this? Because this is exactly what she's doing. She's saying that there's no procurement method. So can't we ask the question, what procurement method has been used?
I will come to your point. Please continue.
Pour de la dotation budgétaire pour les heures supplémentaires du personnel, on nous demande de voter pour un montant additionnel vertigineux de 463 millions de roupies pour les heures supplémentaires effectuées dans le cadre de la pandémie du Covid-19. Mais comme je l'ai dit plus tôt, je suis reconnaissante envers les efforts et les sacrifices du personnel hospitalier. Mais n'aurait-il pas été plus efficient de recruter plus de médecins? Pourquoi, avec la demande accrue du personnel...
This is policy again.
Mais peut-être...
Now you're dictating the policy of a ministry. This is a very technical issue. Maybe this is what you don't understand, Madame Fouquet. This is a technical issue. Your debate should be restricted to the figures as to why these sums of money are needed. So if you want to dictate to the ministry, why don't you employ more nurses, more doctors? This is policy decision.
Ce que j'ai à dire, c'est que, pour conclure, Monsieur le Président, notre pays passe par des moments très difficiles et notre peuple souffre chaque jour de plus en plus. Et en ces temps pareils, qu'il faut valoriser encore plus le rôle capital de la bonne gouvernance et l'utilisation intelligente des fonds publics.
Your time is over. What la censure? Who said la censure? No! You see how you're trespassing your right as an MP? This is a chair. If you don't know, this is a chair. This is a speaker. No! No, don't say things that did not exist, Madame. You're exaggerating. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I will limit my speech to the additional budget allotted to the Ministry of Health and Wellness. I hope that this time members of the other side of the House will not do walkout when it comes to committee stage. And the same opposition member is pointing out about amateurism. Honorable Utim just said that the MOH, the Ministry of Health, is the champion of wasting public funds. My comment would be, it is a shame to blame our frontliners for their contribution to fight the COVID-19. He was getting emotional, but I was getting nausea. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Fouquet should have waited at the time when it will be the time to give all the replies to her questions about on the different steps used for procurement, how much money was spent for what. But in fact, she came here to do politics instead of waiting me at the time of committee stage to give us the reply. She was there, and now she's saying that it's censure. I don't know what she's saying. She has to, she has to really learn a lot how to proceed with this item. Mr. Speaker, sir, as you are aware, years 2020, 2021 were heavily impacted by the outbreak of COVID. No one would have predicted or planned such situation, except, I believe, Honorable Utim, who is an expert in weather forecast, and I know now he's also an expert in pandemic forecast. We should not forget that then back in 2020, when international organizations like WHO predicted that our country would face cases by thousands, tens of thousands of people would need hospital care, thousands would require ICU care, while casualties would also exceed several thousands. This is what we call, what Honorable Utim is telling us, we have wasted public funds. As a consequence, we in government started to elaborate our preparedness plan under the guidance of WHO again, with the main objective to protect the lives of each and every citizen of this country, and what those members are saying that we have been wasting public funds. Contact tracing, quarantine strategy, sanitary measures, strong public adherence have surely been a key to our successful management of COVID pandemic. Again, what they call wasting of public funds. During this period, my ministry published more than 80 public health regulations to ensure sanitary measures are being correctly adhered to. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mauritius is without any doubt one of the only countries in the world where quarantine facilities as well as convenience were offered free of charge to its citizens. Free of charge, Mr. Speaker, sir, and what they call wastage of public funds. In order to ensure the comfort of these contact cases, we did the needful to place them in quarantine, in comfortable hotels room, what again they call wastage of funds. Even some members of the other side of the house has to go through the quarantine. They were at that time impressed with the level of standard, but now they can't admit it publicly. These quarantine centers allowed us to curb down the
Honorable Fukun from talking about policy, and then you're allowing the minister to talk about policy. Well, what are we doing here? This is a point of order. Either there is no policy or there is policy.
Honorable Utim, you should understand, this debate is about how the money will be used. If the money were used like in quarantine, he is making his case. There is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. Please, bear with me.
These quarantine centers.
Who said very unfair? Please, please. Yes. Yes, please withdraw from the House. You can't say that to a speaker. You can't say that to a speaker who's unfair. This is commenting on the conduct and character of the speaker.
You are being unfair.
Both of you walk out. Both of you walk out. Second one. Both of you walk out third time. And I'm suspending, if you're not walking out, I'm suspending the sitting. These are chief comments, being fair or unfair or whatever it is. Walk out, if not I'm going to name you.